It's Lindsay Patterson over on All Bengals. It's a special week, Super Bowl week for the Cincinnati Bengals. So I had to bring in one of the best on the NFL side, Greg Cosell. You can see his work, executive producer and analyst over on NFL Matchup. Greg, how you doing?
Lindsay, it's good to be with you. I know you got to be excited.
There's a lot going on. And the thing is, I've talked to you plenty of times over just the past couple seasons, but even this season alone, if I were to tell you back in September that the Cincinnati Bengals were going to be playing in the Super Bowl, what would you have said?
I mean, of course, no one would have said they would have been. Lindsay, I've been around for a long time, as you know. I just finished my 42nd season at NFL Film, so I've seen a few things. So I don't necessarily get truly surprised because every season kind of plays itself out. But there's no question no one would have said in September that the Cincinnati Bengals were going to be in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's wild stuff. And we'll go ahead and get to it right now, because when you look at this matchup, we're all focused on the Rams right now. I wanted to go back on Kansas City, but you know what? This big Super Bowl 56, let's focus on this matchup versus the Rams. How does the Bengals offense stack up versus this Rams defense?
Well, I think, look, you bring me on because I'm pretty realistic about this stuff. I mean, you have to say that the offensive line for the Bengals is always a little bit of an issue, and they're playing a defensive front that's really good. And obviously there's three names that people talk about, and that starts with Aaron Donald, and then you have Von Miller, and you have Leonard Floyd. But when you watch the tape, there's two other players on that D line who are really good, and I think will end up being a big factor in this game, one way or the other. And that's A'Shawn Robinson and particularly Greg Gaines. They are really good run defenders. And the one thing we know about the Bengals is they are not just a throw it around the yard offense. They want to run the ball. We saw that against Kansas City. They have to run the ball because their O-line can't protect. If you ask Joe Burrow to drop back by choice 45 times a game, they can't protect. So look, against Kansas City, Mixon had 21 rushes. 16 of them came on first down. So you're going to get a matchup of the base defense of the Rams, where they play a five-man front against the Bengals run game. And Gaines and Robinson are going to be really, really important players. Greg Gaines has become so critical to that run defense.
Do you think this is going to be one of the best defenses that this offense had faced all season?
I think the front is, yes. The defensive front for sure. So the question becomes, how will the Bengals choose to run the ball? Will they choose to run the ball out of three wide receivers, or will they choose to run the ball with two tight ends? And obviously, as you and I are speaking today, we don't know about CJ Uzomah. But if it's not him, it'll be Sample and Wilcox, as we saw once he got hurt in the AFC Championship game. So that's the question, because the Rams front, when they're in their base defense, is essentially a 5-2 front, five across, two stacked backers. Now, even when they're in nickel, they might still play with a five across front. So it'll be interesting to me how the Rams choose to play versus the three wide receivers of the Bengals. And we'll get into that momentarily. But the point is, they're going to see a lot of five-man fronts.
When we think of getting your popcorn ready, you think of rookie wide receiver Jamar Chase versus Jalen Ramsey. Do you think Ramsey's going to be chasing Chase most of the game?
That's the question a lot of people are going to talk about. And all I can do is tell you what the film has showed of the Rams defense up to this point. Now, when teams have 2 weeks and they bring in all their scouts and everybody in the organization on the personnel side to do tape work, things do change. But throughout this season, Jalen Ramsey has not been a matchup corner. They are not a high percentage man-to-man defense, and Ramsey does not line up against the opponent's best receiver. Now, there'll be snaps in which he does, of course, but it has not been a matchup deal. So, like I said, we don't know the answer to that. I'm sure a lot of people think, well, that makes sense, but then you have to think of it the other way. If he does that, that means Darius Williams, who's about 5'11 and 185 pounds, is going to match up on T. Higgins. So it's not just as simple as saying, okay, Ramsey is on Chase, unless they want to just put Ramsey on Chase and pretty much say he's on an island, no help at all, and now we have more players to deal with the other receivers. That certainly is possible. But all I can tell you is what the tape has shown up to this point in the season, and Ramsey has not been a matchup corner.
Let's flip sides right now. You get Matthew Stafford as the quarterback for the Rams. Which defenses this season have given this Rams offense the most trouble?
Oh God, I haven't really thought of it that way because I think they're a good offense. So I really can't answer that right off the top of my head, but I think that they're a difficult pass game to defend because they're very diverse formationally. They do a lot in terms of stacks and bunches. One of the things they do exceptionally well is they get Cooper Kupp free access off the ball. And when he gets free access off the ball, it allows him to set up his routes. And there may be no one better in the league at setting up routes with an understanding of pace and tempo. And now over the last number of weeks, Odell Beckham has really settled in. He's primarily what we call the boundary X, which is what Jamar Chase started the season mostly playing. So that's the single receiver to the short side of the field. And last week he had 11 targets, 9 catches for 113 yards. And he's very talented, obviously. And they'll take their shots with Van Jefferson. So this is a very difficult offense to defend with the talent and the way they deploy that talent with what we call receiver distribution and location. Higbee, the tight end, again, he's in the same situation as Uzama. We don't know, and we may not know till Sunday morning whether these guys are going to play. So we just don't know. But he's a really good player too. So we'll see. Obviously, the other tight end, Kendall Blanton, came in and he's showed some pretty good athleticism. So they threw the ball to him because that's part of their offense. So we'll see how that goes. But this is a tough offense to defend.
Why is Cooper Kupp? I mean, some would say, obviously, the MVP award will more than likely go to a quarterback. Right. But he's playing like an MVP level right now. Why is he so hard to guard?
Well, some of it's him and some of it's what they do with him. It's a great combination of what they do. But he has such a great understanding of how to run routes. Routes are about pace, tempo, and setting up the defense, whether it's man or zone. And he has such a great feel for that. When you're playing versus man, if it's not pressed, that is, you're trying to get the corner off his spot. And you have to do that with how you use your vertical stem, the pace, the timing, the tempo. Kupp has such a great feel for that. He never looks like he's in a hurry. Everything times out beautifully with the quarterback's drop. And pure speed has very little to do with route running. And, obviously Kupp, I remember being at the combine when he ran a 4.62 and people thought, oh boy, that's going to kill him. Well, that's really irrelevant for route running. He has great short area quickness and he can separate at the top of his route stem. And he's just a really tough cover. And Beckham, people sort of forgot about him after his first couple of years with the Giants, but he's very, very talented as well.
You mentioned Odell, and I'll raise my hand and say I didn't see it working out for him after he left Cleveland. Everybody knows kind of the soap opera drama that happened there with having Baker as a quarterback, but he moves on to LA, and now he's in the Super Bowl right now, at least getting 4 catches a game. What is his role with this team on the other side of Cooper Kupp?
Well, when they got him, they had to change some things, and it took some time. And just to get into a little bit of the nuts and bolts here and go into the weeds a little, which, is what I do. Before Beckham got there, Van Jefferson was their boundary X, their single receiver to the short side of the field, and Robert Woods was their movement Z, essentially the position T. Higgins plays for the Bengals. When they got Beckham, they had to make some adjustments, especially when Woods got hurt. Beckham became the boundary X because that's what he is. And they had to move Jefferson. And this is not that easy to do during the season. They had to move Jefferson from that boundary X. He became the Z. The Z is the receiver that goes in motion because he's off the ball. The X receiver is on the line of scrimmage and he can't really move. So they had to make that adjustment in the middle of the season. And that takes a little time. And now they've settled in really, really well with the 3 receivers, and Beckham adds a lot. I mean, Beckham now works on the backside of trips. He's the single receiver. There's 3 receivers to the other side. He's able to run a lot of those in-breaking routes. When you're the X receiver, the single receiver, you're not running routes in combination with any other receiver. So you're working against a corner, and Beckham can win. Beckham, he may not be the same vertical guy he was earlier in his career, but he can win in the short to intermediate area because he has great route quickness.
I want to end it with Joe Burrow, but one more question about the defense right now, because if you look at all the playoff games, the Raiders, Tennessee, and then the Kansas City Chiefs, what do you think about this defense right now for the Bengals? And do you feel like they're kind of underappreciated?
Probably. I mean, underappreciated, again, I don't think in terms of the way people talk about things. I sit and watch the tape, and I know it, I know when the Rams watch the tape, they'll see what they see. I think people probably don't talk about it very much because Burrow's burst on the scene. Chase has burst on the scene. They seem to be an offensive type team. They don't necessarily have a star on defense in the minds of the public. Even though Trey Hendrickson had 14.5 sacks, I don't think when people think of the best pass rushers in the league, his name would be on the tip of people's tongue. So I think it's not talked about. That doesn't mean that it's not good or that the Rams aren't looking at it and saying, hey, this is a tough challenge. What they did obviously in the second half against Kansas City has been talked about an awful lot. And it was a very good adjustment. To be honest, I was kind of surprised that it had the effect it did on Kansas City. But hey, that's a different question. But, I think that I guess I would answer it this way. I think it's a beatable defense, but they do have good players. And if they can rush the quarterback, then I think they can be effective. And that's going to be a big factor in this game because Matthew Stafford is really good, but there are times he gets stuck in the pocket. And if you can pressure him, then I think you can make him sort of, what's the best way to describe it? He ends up playing slower mentally. And I think that's what you want to try to do.
All right, I'll end it with one more question right now. We'll go to the quarterback, Joe Burrow, the king of Cincinnati. It's crazy. In his first full season, he's playing in a Super Bowl. You go back to the Titans game, you watch him a lot. We've talked plenty about the Bengals offensive line. I mean, 9 sacks in the Titans game and still come back to throw the game-winning first down to set him up for the field goal. It's pretty incredible for Joe Burrow. But what do you think of his play in the postseason right now? And what does he have to do in this game to bring that Lombardi to Cincinnati for the first time ever?
Yeah, he's played well. I mean, I don't think that this past week was a big-time offensive performance. And obviously, he made 4 scrambles on third down, which were really, really important in the game. That's what made them 8 for 14 on third down, which when you just see it on the stat sheet, you say, oh, my God, that's great. But 4 of them were scrambles, and he's capable of doing that. And he's certainly capable of great throws. And I love the fact that he's aggressive with his mindset throwing the ball. I mean, we haven't talked about Chase, and Chase is interesting because what they do with him, he's much more of a matchup player than a highly schemed player. Higgins is the receiver that they run a lot more schemed concepts for. Chase can very often just be kind of 1-on-1, and they feel really comfortable throwing him the ball. And Burrow is super aggressive throwing it. And I knew that as he played more and gained more experience, the interceptions would drop because he would just understand intuitively, hey, that's a throw I can make. That's a throw I can't make in this given situation. And I think that's kind of happened. But, it comes back to the fact that he'll likely be under duress in this Super Bowl at times, not every snap. And it's those plays that could well determine the game because I guarantee, look, this is the way it works. With coaches and during their meetings, Lindsay, I guarantee that the Rams defensive coordinators and coaches are saying to their group, hey, you get pressure on Joe Burrow and he's going to give us one. He might even give us 2. I guarantee they're saying that because, he has done that at times. So it's really going to be important. I think, number one, the O-line is going to have to play well. And number 2, the game's going to have to play out in such a way that the Bengals can stay balanced. They have to be able to stay with the run game and have some volume and some production. You just can't get into too many long yardage situations, or I think they could be exposed a little bit.
Great, Cosell, one of the best in the business. All NFL fans need to follow him over on Twitter. He'll tell you he doesn't tweet much, but he retweets all his work. So make sure you check it out, NFL Matchup too. Greg, thank you so much for joining us for this big Super Bowl week. The Cincinnati Bengals, Los Angeles Rams, Super Bowl 56 just days away. Thank you again, sir.
Thanks, Lindsay.